Good morning and welcome to our webinar today, The Importance of Certifying Steel, Fire and Security Doors. My name is Georgia Burton and I will be your host for today's webinar. Today we are pleased to be joined by Efectis, who will give an insight into the process of achieving accreditation and the limitations and benefits of having door sets which provide both security and fire protection from a notified body perspective. Firstly, I'd like to say a big thank you to Efectis France for being part of our webinar today. So let's meet the speakers. So Jerome Visse is product leader doors for Efectis France. Jerome has worked for Efectis for 15 years, specialising in fire, testing and assessing performance for metallic or timber doors. Jerome is also a member of the TC127WG3 committee. The committee determined fire safety requirements for buildings. Yannick Tallec is the certification director at Efectis France. Yannick has worked for Efectis for 20 years and is a well-known specialist in certification processes in Europe and in the UK. She is also a member of the SHO2 SGO6 committee, the committee determining the ignitability of multi-layered products. And Peter Hill is standing in today for Andy Edser, who is unfortunately unwell, so thank you, Pete. Pete has over 25 years experience in the industry and has been with Bradbury Group for over 22 years. Pete is an experienced mechanical engineer and has worked across a number of roles within the group, from engineering and door design to manufacturer's works manager. Pete is currently our external key account manager, providing advice and technical support to the group's customers. So a little bit about Efectis. It was founded over 70 years ago. Efectis employs over 270 employees across 20 sites, including 10 laboratories. They have a wide range of dedicated equipment, including 14 furnaces and 3 mobile furnaces. The company conducts approximately 3,000 fire tests each year and has over 850 accredited standards within the group. With over 70 years experience, Efectis specialises in assessing the fire performance of products, systems or entire projects, whatever the sector, whether that be nuclear, transportation, infrastructure or residential dwellings. Efectis provides a wide range of testing from fire resistance and reaction to fire to extinguishing systems and equipment, among many others. Efectis is continuously expanding its worldwide recognised services, always looking for partnerships and hiring talent. So a little bit about the Bradbury Group. It was founded in 1991 by owner Tim Strawson. The company began as a security grills manufacturer and developed into the physical security solutions manufacturer you see today. Still family owned, the company is based in Scunthorpe, North Lincolnshire, and employs over 180 people. In 2018, the company moved into a state-of-the-art 135,000 square foot manufacturing facility, capable of manufacturing and distributing doors within 5 working days. The large storage capacity allows for the larger projects and ongoing requirements of our customers. We are IOS 9001 accredited and we have a comprehensive package of certified products through regulatory bodies, including BRE and Secure by Design. So firstly, I'd like to welcome Jerome to the webinar, who will take us through fire safety and the processes of third-party certifications. Over to you, Jerome.
Hello, so my name is Jerome Visse. As Georgia said, I'm responsible for fire door testing and certification in Efectis France, and we will talk about the importance of fire door safety and third-party certification. Next one, Georgia, please. Fire doors play a major role in case of fire. By isolating the fire when it started, to protect the evacuation of people, to allow the intervention of the firemen, and protecting goods in other areas. But in order to play this role, their conception and installation have to be checked and validated, mainly for safety reasons, because it's the basis of what we do, but also to comply with the regulation and mostly also for insurances. That's why we need a third-party certification. To achieve this certification, the process is quite similar between CE marking or UK CE marking, and is based on several steps. First one of these steps is to perform some fire tests with sampling of the elements that are going to be tested. Then we draft a document that we call classification report, which describes the valid range of the product. We perform factory production control, we deliver the certification, and we perform yearly audits in order to check that the manufacturing is still good according to what we have tested. As responsible of the certification, when we perform the fire test, the manufacturer has to define the range of product he wants to certify. When we speak about range of product, there are several points to check, such as the performance, for example, the number of leaves, the fire site, the supporting construction, maximum and minimal dimension. So a very exhaustive list of elements that can be put in the range. And based on this element, the test standard and the EXAP standard, the notified body will define the test to be performed. So for people who are not familiar with fire testing, we will make some quick explanation of what is fire testing. So fire test on doors are performed according to BS EN 1634 Part 1 standard, which defines the test to be performed. Regarding the performances of the fire doors that we can certify, we have the E doors, which are only fire integrity. We have EW, fire integrity plus radiation, and EI, which is integrity plus insulation. Tests are performed in furnaces under what we call ISO 834 curve, which is a cellulosic fire curve, which is used in many countries since many years. Next one, please. Yeah. For this performing of fire test and regarding the performances, E-performances is linked to the fire integrity. It means that we have no flaming on the exposed side, on the unexposed side. We have no gap gauges, aperture, and we have no flaming of a cotton wool pad that we can apply on the unexposed side. For the high performance, which is thermal insulation, it's not really used in UK. It's mainly for Europe application, but in UK, the most part of the doors are only E, but we'll talk about it anyway. And in order to assess this high performance, we use thermocouples that we put on the unexposed side, and we have limit of temperature not to reach. This temperature is 140 degrees of mean temperature on all the leaf, and 180 degrees at 100 millimeter from the edge of this leaf. For insulation, there is a specific things for doors, which is two different level of insulation, which is I1 and I2. To be quick, I1 is used only in Belgium, so manufacturers who want to sell their product in Belgium has to comply with I1 performance, but it is the only country in Europe that use this kind of classification. For all other countries, it's only I2, which means thermocouples are placed at 100 millimeters from the edge of the door. when the test campaign is achieved, hopefully with a successful test, the result and the valid range have to be merged into one document, which is called the classification report. This classification report is based on the test result, but also on the direct field of application of the EN 1634 Part 1 standard, and on the extended field of application given in standard called EXAP for extended application, which is from the EN 15269 series. So for each type of doors, there is a dedicated standard. For example, for metallic hinge door, it will be 15269-2. For timber hinge door, it will be -3, etc. And these EXAP standards give a list of modifications that are allowed without performing a new test. So that's why it's very important to define clearly the range to validate before we perform the test in order to cover the bigger range as possible. And the notified body is also responsible for the FPC, so the factory production control, and the certificate, so CE or UK CE certificate. Factory production control is performed yearly, and so the certificate. We worked with Bradbury regarding this fire certification, but Bradbury has also security doors, so doors that combines different performances. This kind of door with multi-performance is very requested on the market because in general it takes less space, it's cheaper, it's quicker to install because you have only one door to install. It's easier also for maintenance. But on a design point of view, having several performances on just one product can be difficult because when you improve one performance, you can degrade another one. For example, regarding the security performance, there are many ways to improve it. You can add some stiffeners in the leaf, for example, but in this case, you create new thermal bridges between the hot face and the cold face. You can increase the steel thickness, but in this case, you increase the quantity of steel that will heat, and so you increase the bending effect. You can also reduce gaps, but you have risk of high dilatation, or adding covering plates, but it will modify the fire behavior of the door. So improving a performance can degrade another one, and Peter will speak about how they manage with these issues. Thank you, Georgia.
Thank you, Jerome. So I'd now like to welcome Yannick to the webinar, who will provide an insight into the benefits and limitations of having door sets, providing both security and fire protection, as well as certification is an insight into CE and UK CA certification from a notified body perspective. Welcome, Yannick.
Thank you, Georgia. Morning, everyone. Then I will try to take you through CE marking, UK CE marking, which are the mandatory marking for the time being, I would say, and conclude with giving you tips, if I can say it that way, on what can be other type of certifications that can be of real importance for fire doors in particular. Okay, Georgia, thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, just for the time being, if we talk about the actual regulation, you know that since the Brexit decision, we have now two systems running in parallel. Then if you are putting your fire doors on the market in EU countries and in the UK, unfortunately, you have to go through the two systems. That's the unfortunate part. The good part is that for the time being, the two regulations are identical. The requirements are identical, basic requirements for construction works, they are word for word the same. The AVCP system, assessment and verification of constancy of performance system, are identical. We are lucky also in a way that the harmonized standards have been kept identical for the UKCA, and you can find the list, in fact, for both sides, CE and UKCA, in the respective website for the European Commission, and on the UK Gov website you have the full list of standard. But this is exactly, well, not exactly, but roughly a copy-paste of the list. What remains is also, in both cases, you have to issue a declaration of constancy of performance. Just the only difference will be on one, you will put CE and make reference to the European Construction Product Regulation, and on the other one, you will use UKCA and put the reference for the UK Construction Product Regulation. What is still not completely clear is application of EC decision. There are cases, for example, when it's mainly for reaction to fire, where you have classification without testing or without further testing. That can be helpful for some manufacturers. And delegated acts, for example, one delegated act is on classification for fire resistance. They are applicable for CE marking, and for the time being, there is no, I would say, between brackets, official words on that, but they are considered also applicable for the UKCA. Next slide, please. Okay, just to summarize what was already presented by Jerome on the process for CE marking, but exactly the same again for UKCA. You have on top the AVCP system, 1+, 1, 2+, 3, and 4. They remain valid for UKCA with exactly the same meaning. Then definition of product type, that for the manufacturer to define the product type, it's related to the performance that you will want to declare. The type testing, as Jerome said previously, and if we concentrate on fire door, is under the responsibility of a laboratory, notified laboratory. Then for additional testing and control of the production, this is under the responsibility of the manufacturer, of course, because that's your production. You check your product during production. I will not go too far on audit testing because it's on a limited number of products and it's not applicable for doors at all. And then you have the factory production control, which is the basis for the constancy of performance, and to demonstrate the constancy of performance, because the type test, as it is called, only need to be performed once, providing you don't modify the product, the standard is not modified, and you don't modify the condition of producing the doors. And then you have the process of initial inspection, continuous surveillance, and that's exactly the same if you have CE or if you want to CE mark or UKCE mark your product. Next slide, please. Basic requirements, I will not spend too long on that. That's what is requested for the two regulations, CE and UKCA. And the ones that we concentrate on today is basically safety in case of fire. And as Jerome explained earlier, testing is exactly the same. Classification report is exactly the same. It's always based on EN standard, and for which we have been working on for some time now. Thank you. Next slide, please. Now the differences, because of course that would be too good if everything was the same. For CE marking, we have what we call notified bodies, which usually you can see NBs. For UKCA marking, you will have something called approved body. Where we are lucky is that the number of previous UK notified body have been kept when they have been designated as approved bodies. And if you had already DOPs or CE logo with their number, you can keep it even if you change CE for UKCA. For the notification of the bodies, for the CE marking, the organization has to be based in one of the European countries, and they are designated by the member states, the EU member states. For the UK CE marking, the requirement is to have a registered UK legal entity. Then it means only organization based, registered in the UK. There is a specific case for Ireland, and I think you will find more details on different websites for that, with the application of protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland. Just one point is that on the European website, you will see the list of Irish organizations that are notified, and for example, for the Construction Product Directive, it's only Efectis France who is notified on this website for the UK NI, and with a specific number. Now, if we go more in what you will have to deal if you're a manufacturer of doors. If you need CE and UK CE marking, you will need to have two different bodies, one for the CE, one for the UK CA. For the time being, there are two cases that we can find. Body that have entities based in the EU and based in the UK or Northern Ireland. This is the case for us, for Efectis France, for Efectis Group, sorry, with different entities in France, Netherlands and Turkey for the European part, and in the UK for the UK part, of course. And the second case is to find one body in the EU and a completely different one, if I can say it that way, for the UK CA. It can be a little bit more complicated if you have to find different entities for the two marking. Next slide, please. Okay, for the CE marking, unfortunately, there is no recognition of UK CE marking at the moment. The CE based on a UK notified body before Brexit shall be reconsidered. I will say it that way because things will depend on the AVCP system you are working on and on what part of the certification process we are talking about. It's applicable for some doors. For internal doors, for example, there are manufacturers who requested CE marking for internal doors when it's not possible at the moment. And what I want to point out is that if you are in this case and you have an ETA based on an EAD issued before the Brexit situation, and the ETA was issued by a UK body, then you have to ask for a new ETA because they are considered as not valid anymore. For the UK CA marking, I would say it's a little bit easier until the 31st of December 2022. CE marking can be accepted for the time being. And one important point for AVCP3, fortunately doesn't relate to fire performances, but if you declare acoustic performances or thermal performance of the door, it can be applicable. You can still use the type testing that have been issued by an EU notified body, providing the test and classification report are issued before the 31st of December 2022. And this is valid with no limitation date for the time being. Next slide, please. Okay, then how does it work? If you already have CE marking before the 31st of December 2022 and providing the two regulations are not modified and remain the same. I don't think that will happen now. It's a little bit too late to have modification of the regulations. For AVCP 1+, which is for just a limited number of products, but for one for fire doors and doors on escape route, the type testing is under the responsibility of the certification body. What does that mean? It means that there is no need to repeat the test. Of course, providing you have not modified the product production process and or the standard that we use for the certification process. Inspection of the factory production control shall be performed for the purpose of CE marking and for the purpose of UKCA marking. Even if the requirements are similar, the experience shows that the requirement of accreditation body are a little bit different, and we have to consider both. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that you will need to have 2 inspections. 1 inspection will be sufficient, providing you have a notified body that can perform CE and UKCA, but you will have 2 inspection reports, 1 specific for CE marking, 1 specific for UKCA. That's the only additional thing I would say you will have if you work with bodies that have entities in the two sites, Europe and UK, even if UK is in Europe. The certification decision and therefore the certificate of constancy of performance shall be issued by 2 different entities, 1 for the CE marking and 1 for the UKCA. Well, for Efectis, you will always have an Efectis certificate, but one will be issued, for example, by Efectis France and the other one by Efectis UK Ireland. But that's based on exactly everything else is common. That's a common file. It's just at the end we have to separate the 2 decisions. Next slide, please. Okay, then for EVCP3, that's a little bit different. You can use the type testing that has been issued by a CE notified body if the test and test report are issued before the 31st of December 2022. That's important. After that date, it doesn't work anymore. On your DOP, what is important is that on your DOP, you will have to indicate the number of the notified body, but from the EU. There is no validity date for this application, except, again, that's always the same thing. If you modify the product, if you modify the production process, or if the standard has been modified, then you will have to reconsider. One thing that is not clear at the moment is regarding responsibilities in case of dispute. If you have a DOP with an NB number from a European organization for UKCA, how will that work? We have no information on that. Then, considering this specific point, that well, it has been a few cases in Europe, not exactly on the same project, but we know that there are some cases that can go to court. We advise that you could consider applying UKCA working with the UK approval body lab. And I will go to that in more detail to explain you how it can work. Next slide, please. Okay, if you do not have the CE marking, it doesn't change a lot, basically, compared to you need sampling and type testing under the responsibility of the certification body. Then if you ask for CE, a CE notified body. If you ask for UKCA, an approved body. Inspection of the factory production control, you should, if you want to have both CE and UKCA, you have to consider both regulations. If you only want one, you consider the one you need. And again, certification, decision and certificates, that will be, if you want CE and UKCA, you will have 2 different decisions, 2 different certificates for the same family of product. Then I would like to focus on how we work on that principle inside Efectis. We can offer 1 entry point where we deal with CE and UKCA marking, 1 sampling, 1 set of type testing, which is valid for both CE and UKCA, 1 inspection where we consider the requirements from both regulations, but 2 inspection reports, 2 independent certification decision and separate certificates, and when we arrive to the annual surveillance in case of fire doors, then that's the same process that will apply with only one entry point. That means you don't have to ask Efectis France and Efectis UK for two different certification. Next slide, please. I was saying earlier that I will give you more details on how to work with AVCP3 and in a specific case where you do not have the CE marking already. Type testing shall be performed by NB for CE marking and by an approved body for the UKCA. Then it could mean that you have to repeat the test. How we work with within Efectis, and this is something that is approved by the group of notified body, but also recognized by the group of approved body in the UK. The principle is fire performance to be declared are specified in the classification reports. Then, how we work, the testing is shared between the CE notified body and the UK approved body. Basically, we perform some tests in Efectis UK Ireland, and we perform some tests in one of the other entity of Efectis. And based on this, we put together all this testing, all these test reports, exact reports if they have been issued, and we issue a two classification reports. In fact, that's because we will need two. One that will be used for CE, with a CE notified body number, and one for UKCA that will be issued by Efectis UK Ireland. And this will allow to limit the number of testings that is needed, and also allow to cover both CE and UKCA. Next slide, please. Okay, for the future, for the CE and UKCA as mandatory requirements, until the two regulations remain with the same requirements, there will be no change. Some of you are possibly aware of that, but in the EU there are discussions on the revision of the CPR, and that's where we can have the two systems can go on their own way at what time. We have information that the publication of the new regulation for Europe could be effective in 2024. But there are a lot of discussion, a lot of comments and so on. And I'm not sure that that will be the case. Still under discussion, we are waiting. But if we talk about doors, first application will not start in 2024, because in order to have, if there is a new regulation, which could be different to the one you have in the UK, is that will take some time, because we will need to have new standards, new AMINA standards, and so on. And it could take a few years. With experience, I would say more than 5 years before anything change. We have the experience with internal fire doors, which are still without CE marking, and then without UKCA marking possible. This is what I wanted to explain to you about, I will say, what I call mandatory certification, because CE marking and the UKCA marking are mandatory. What is missing in the system is because we concentrate really on the product itself, production of the product, but nothing is considered for installation. And that's where voluntary certification can be very important, because it's very good to have a certified fire doors, but if the fire doors has good performance, but it's not installed properly, then you have lost all the benefit of all the testing that were done, and all the care that you put in the production of the door. And I would say the future now, after the mandatory part of the certification, is to go a step further and go for certification of installation and so on. And with that, I will say thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Yannick. just to put in there, all our speakers' contact details will be available at the end of the webinar if you need to get into contact with them with anything. So finally, I'd like to welcome Pete Hill, who will explain a little about what goes into the design and manufacture of the Bradbury Group's range of external CE and security doors. So over to you, Pete.
Good morning, so good afternoon if you're in the other part of the world. I'd just like to welcome you to the Bradbury webinar. We've got a concept and design for a door that comes to the needs of the customers, and the market drivers and demand in recent years. There's been a lot more emphasis on fire and security, leading to the need for the development of doors within combined certification. Once a product needs to be established, work begins on the design, usually beginning with a CAD system, computer-aided design software. At this stage, considerations into the design versus certification are taken into account to ensure the product is more likely to meet both the customer needs and the demand of testing. Once the design is finalised, a template is created which includes limitations in design and hardware before being placed into the automated processing system. Due to the nature of our doors, limitations are set to ensure that the certification requirements are met and that the product gets through the testing process. Next slide, please. Bradbury Group's doors can be certified up to LPS 1175 right up to SR4, and with the additional fire integrity. Vision panels are available in a wide range of sizes and configurations. Vision panel can be used in security doors up to SR4, but only in internal fire rated doors, providing they meet the industry standards. Doors with lift-off hinges ensure much easier installation, which means installers do not have to hold the weight of the door and put screws in hinges when fitting the door. A hole at the top of the door is used to lift the door using lifting equipment, dropping the door into place, making the installation much easier and safer. Side and over panels are ideal for aesthetics and on communal doors, and enable you to adapt the opening so that a standard size door can be fitted. Door openings can be much larger than the actual door requirement, and panels are ideal for fitting into the space, as a large oversized steel door can be much heavier and much more difficult to open. Polyester powder coating is a safe, clean, economical, eco-friendly, strong and durable paint method. It's solvent-free, lead-free and easy to dispose of and highly durable. It's got a low carbon footprint. It meets a wide range of global coating standards and is available in almost any colour. A range of finishes including matte, gloss and textured. Bladed and punched louvers are utilised indoors for ventilation and airflow. They can be supplied in steel and aluminium and come in a range of sizes and configurations. Next slide, please. Door closers are available in a variety of devices used to open and close doors that can aid the opening of the door, particularly on heavy doors, and can be linked to fire alarms, ensuring the safety of pedestrians. There are a range of limit stays available which can prevent doors from causing damage to the surrounding infrastructure, stopping it at, say, 90 degrees. Bradbury Group has certified fire doors up to 240 minutes, meaning the doors can withstand fire integrity for up to 240 minutes, 4 hours. Steel doors can be supplied with multiple frame profiles which can be adopted to suit the supporting structure. Varying thresholds are available to suit the surrounding conditions. As an example, inward opening thresholds can withstand water ingress, or ramp thresholds are ideal for trolleys, not to damage the bottom. Thresholds should be DDA compliant for obvious reasons. DDA doors are available in a single or double or leaf and half. They have inward, outward, and you can have sidewards or revolving openings. Steel security doors tend to have inward or outward security openings as standard. Hardware is available in a multiple options, but these become more limited when standards and certification are involved. Specifications of doors vary on standards, but technically a door can be made to fit almost any opening. The door must be specified to suit the required use and standard meeting some specifications restrictions may come into play. Not everything is possible. As this webinar focuses on CE and security rated doors, we're going to focus on the limitations of these doors. As with all certification, the hardware placed on a door set must achieve the CE and LPCB SR rated standards. This places limitations, as previously discussed, on the hardware available for use. At the present time, Bradbury Group's range of certified external fire and security doors are not available with vision panels or optional side panels and over panels. This is externally only developed. However, this is under development to expand the current offering. So you cannot have those externally at the moment, but we will get there. Our fire testing, we used Efectis France, as talked to the two people previously, which are an independent notified body. Our security ratings were achieved through the BRE, who tested our doors to LPS 1175, SR2, 3 and 4. We've done it. The table provides an overview of the sizing limitations and available fire integrity for external CE and security rated doors. For example, a single door has a maximal structural opening size of 1380 wide, which is a big door, and 2820 high, and this is certified for up to 4 hours of fire integrity. Opening doors inward opening doors often perform differently to outward opening. Next slide, please. We'll now look at the manufacturing process of a steel door, which is quite an insight. Anybody that would like to come, we can organise a trip around the factory. In 2018, we moved to a new facility which provides a continuous production line, ensuring full movement of the door from start to finish. This provides flexibility and means we can fluctuate our capacity based on market demands. The move was a significant investment for the group and ensures we can produce 90% of our individual leaves in just under 24 hours, including our security and fire rated doors. Our niche is in the security rated doors, which is the option for the additional fire certification. Each of our doors are bespoke and fully designed to meet the needs of the customer. At the beginning of the manufacturing process, the doors begin with our Salvagnini machine. I'll wait while it catches up. So this video provides a brief insight into the machine. The machine is fed from the automated design and received from the engineering team previously mentioned. The Salvagnini is an S4. It is a punching and shearing machine. It's automatically fed from the tray we saw first, which is single blanks for sequential production. The fully automated process eliminates manual handling for total safety. You can see the sheet coming on now. This is going into the manipulator. It folds a sheet, forming a shape of a door. But you can see as you carries on, it's doing multiple folds with one setup. So there's actually 3 folds just being completed on that screen. This sheet now turns the sheet over. This is a bit earlier on the system, so it turns the sheet over, producing the sharp edges on the inside of the door instead of the outside of the door, which the punch process does. Next slide, please. So this process is basically an insight into the next phase, where we can see the 3 lines there. 3 different lines are coming off the Salvagnini machine and going into the next phase, which is the assembly. At this point, the leaves are bonded and riveted and welded to provide strength and durability to the door sets. Stainless steel rivets are used with an accuracy, and the punching machine are used with an accuracy of 0.1 of a millimeter. The 3 processes together provide the door with rigidity and maximum security. Next slide, please. We seem to have missed out powder coating. Finishing takes place by hand. This provides an accurate Finishing takes place by hand. This provides accuracy and precision at the stage. All the hardware and the other finishing additions are added. As we mentioned previously, depending on the certification, the hardware and other options are available on a decrease. After finishing the doors, those are packaged for storage and the warehouse and then onwards for transportation. Finally, we'll look at the installation considerations, which has been mentioned earlier. The overall fire integrity of a door set depends on the surrounding structure of the building. For example, if you install the door with 4 hours fire integrity, but the building is only certified for 2 hours, the tour takes on the integrity of the building, making that just a 2-hour door. It is the responsibility of the customer to ensure the overall structure meets the minimum fire requirements for the building in question. As with all standards, there are installation requirements which should be met to ensure the compliance. For example, the limitations on surrounding gap and fixings that are used to install the door should always be taken into account. Details of this are available in the fitting instruction from the door supplier ourselves. For all fire door installations, installers should be certified to FIRAS. This is a voluntary mark of endorsement which provides the competency of the installation of the products and are vital for achieving the protection required. It is recommended that security rated doors are only installed by experienced installers and that the fitting instructions for the level of the door are always followed. Bradbury Group can provide fitting instructions on request. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. And thank you to all of our speakers today for their time, and Pete obviously stepping in on such short notice. So we're now just going to take some questions from the audience. Bear with me. So, Jerome, I have a question for you. Do doors need to be tested each year to maintain compliance?
No. as long as the test standard didn't change, the test remained valid. What we do every year or yearly basis, it's only the FPC and the certificate, but the test remains valid as long as the test standard doesn't change.
Lovely, thank you. Also another question for you. Can additions be made to a door without the need for retesting?
It depends on what will need to be added and on the rules given in the EXAP standard. For example, we cannot change a lock compared to what lock have been tested, but there are some rules in the EXAP that allow to add or to make some minor changes, but for main ones such as hardware, locks, door closers, or changing, for example, the insulation, this is not covered, so we need to perform a comparative test here.
Right, thank you. And a question for Yannick. Someone has asked, do my doors need to meet both CE and UKCA standards to be installed in the UK? And does this also apply to Ireland?
Okay, if your door is only put on the market in the UK, you only need the UKCA. Even if the process is similar, you just need the UKCA. For Ireland, it's a little bit different, and CE can be accepted. Some notified body can in the UK can issue the UK NI, and well, CE UK NI, but it's only valid for products that will remain in Ireland.
Lovely, thank you. And also another question for you. What happens to existing doors when the standards change in December? Will they still comply?
They will still comply if there's not. I will just repeat what Jerome said earlier on. Providing nothing has been changed, they still comply with the requirements, and that's during the surveillance inspection that we will progress. But they will still comply. You don't need to retest on the 1st of January. No problem.
Thank you. And Pete, I've got a question for you. Where would you typically install a combined CE security and fire door, and can they be used in communal entrances?
I'll answer the second part first. Communal entrances tend to be a door that's not security rated, except down the bottom end of the scale, and they are a lighter door with normally lots of glass. So I would say you wouldn't use a security rated door as in an SR4 door because of the weight of it. Typically an SR4 fire rated door would be installed in places like data centers where security is very important, but also the resistance to fire to keep the building going is used. They're very heavy doors, they're very expensive doors, and they don't use them when they don't need to use them.
Lovely, thank you. And the last question is also for you, Pete. Do you provide training for installing your door range?
Yes, we do. We supply fitting instructions and minimum fixing standards with doors on demand. Also, we're developing a series of how to do videos and formalised training that people can pass on to their installers. This will assist them in the training package. We can also send out to the end of this, if we want, we can send out some further training packages if you contact us with an email.
Lovely, thank you very much. So that comes to the end of our CPD webinar today. Thank you to all 3 speakers for joining us, and thank you to all the attendees for joining too. I hope you all have a lovely day and see you at the next one.
Thank you.